I compiled a list of the heroes, where they are placed with their strength, and which changes could be made to include more heroes in the meta. Because we have so many bad ones that it seems like it can never be played. Here we go. Here are my balance suggestions. We have S tier, heroes we see all the time and are really good. A tier, heroes who we see play a lot and are really strong, especially with the right strategy. Then B tier, that's mostly heroes that are played out of necessity. There's no great alternative for them, although they are not really good in most cases and are most of the time unplayable, with some good exceptions though. Then C tier is, this hero is almost completely unplayable, only in very niche scenarios can be played. And D tier is basically complete garbage trash, and you can never play in any scenario, with some very, very few exceptions. And of course, the idea here should be bring up the lower tier of heroes so we have more heroes in the meta and not just the same heroes all of the time. And of course, S tier heroes, I think this is a very clear-cut case at the moment. Archmage, Blade Master, Death Knight, Demon Hunter, Lich, Mountain King, Shadowhunter. Yeah. We see these heroes all the time. They're basically in every game, more or less. And I don't think they need nerfs, necessarily, the most of them. They still fulfill an important role. Except for the Demon Hunter. This is the point in the video where the Night Elves will take to their keyboards again. I have been lobbying for this change for a long time. I think mana burn is extremely unhealthy for the game. I think it's cancer, it's annoying, it's non-fun. Now, only nerfing the Demon Hunter and providing no other buffs for the Night Elf wouldn't be good for the balance, obviously, but I have many buffs here for Night Elves lined up, so don't poop your pants too quickly, Night Elves. And also recently, as you guys may have noticed, with the Lumber buff, Night Elves have been doing a little bit better as well. But yeah, Demon Hunter, the fact that Demon Hunter with mana burn, one single hero with one single ability can basically restrict more than half of the mana of the hero pool, maybe even up to 70% of the hero pool from being a viable hero choice, is just bad. The way in which he constricts the meta on one side, and secondly, takes mana away, which is the fun part of Warcraft. The spells are the most fun thing. I hate mana burn. I'm not the only one. It's a terrible mechanic that should never have been in the game in the first place, but here it is. Now, the best thing to happen to the Demon Hunter actually would not be to nerf mana burn, but to replace his skill, the mana burn, with something else, with a really strong other spell, remove mana burn entirely, and give him another ability that fits his kit, fits his style, his theme, ideally, and is really strong as well in the late game as mana burn can be. But here I have to admit my own limitations. I'm not really creative enough to come up with that. I'm not a game designer, believe it or not. I've tried to think of ways to give the Demon Hunter a good ability, but I haven't really come up with a good one yet. So the best thing I can come up with, right now is mana burn range decrease. On the most recent patch, of course, also the Bloodmage, his siphon mana was reduced. Everyone did see and admit there that mana burn is a really annoying ability. It needs to be counterable in some way. And siphon mana is counterable in many ways. For example, it's never good really against ranged heroes, because use the siphon at long range, the ranged hero moves back a little bit, the siphon is broken, and then, you know, there's counterplay available to it. Also, there's other things like ensnare, sleep, hex, impale maybe even, zeppelins. There are lots of ways to break siphon, so counterplay is available, but Demon Hunter mana burn, there's almost no counterplay available, unless you have a gigantic army where the Demon Hunter just cannot move into position to hit the mana burn target, the hero, to take away their mana points. But rarely that is the case, especially when the Demon Hunter has boots, which of course he has most of the time, as they are so good at all stages in the game for the Demon Hunter. I hate mana burn. I want it nerfed. It has been a plague on this game for too long. And I admit that other heroes then for the Night Elves will have to get buffed. We're going to get to that later. Okay, we're going down from S tier to A tier. I think no other changes here are really necessary for the heroes. In the A tier, we have the Paladin and Bloodmage, Naga, and TC. Paladin, we've seen how good he can be with the aura and with Holy Light. If you guys were watching the ATR tournaments, where it was random races, random heroes, there we saw how good the Paladin is also with other races. Once you get some levels, the healing efficiency of Holy Light with only 65 mana is crazy. Bloodmage perhaps is a bit debatable. I will admit this. Is Bloodmage really an A tier hero? Maybe not. Maybe he's more of a B tier hero. But with how good he is with some strats and as some counters is amazing. For example, Siphon mana against Demon Hunter with Immolation, amazing. To give mana to the Paladin is amazing. Also in the Pally Rifle games, Bloodmage level 3 with a Siphon then is always super sick. But in many other matchups, Bloodmage isn't playable at all. So here, debatable, I guess, if he is A or B tier. However, the really, really scary thing and annoying thing and possibly OP thing about the Bloodmage is Siphon mana. But what we never see from him is Flamestrike, which is a shame. Flamestrike is such a cool ability. Just visually speaking, it's like one of the coolest abilities in the game, but we sadly never get to see it. So I think here we should be decreasing the channel time. That means when he casts it, from the time that he casts it until the Flamestrike arises, it's going to decrease that time by 300 milliseconds. And with that, it should be harder to dodge. I think I've heard some people say in the past that the cool thing about the long channel time for the Bloodmage is that you can outplay the Flamestrike and you can cancel it while it's being cast. I actually think that's a very annoying thing and not a cool thing. Like, which other hero can you try to use a spell which used to cost 135 mana, and then if you happen to get stomped or ensnared, all of a sudden there's no spell, no damage, nothing, you just lose 135 mana. That's terrible. That is absolutely horrid. That's like you are level 3 mana burning yourself because you got stunned. And there's still, the thing is, even with this decreased channel time, there's still time to move out of the Flamestrike. So there's still time to counterplay the Flamestrike even when it arises. So having the potential, the big potential, that the Flamestrike just gets cancelled, I think is really bad. It's like Blizzard was thinking here, okay, you know, this Flamestrike ability, we create this Flamestrike ability, and oh my god, it's the best ability in the game. Oh, my phone is ringing. No time right now. It's the best ability in the game. We have to make it cancelable somehow. Okay, we're going to give it a long channel time, so with fast reactions, you can cancel it, because if you don't cancel it sometime, then oh my god, it's just going to kill you because it's so good. Like, that's the rationale, right? Because there's no other spell in the game that's cancelable that way. Level 3 Stomp, pretty sick. Can't cancel it. Level 3 Clap, pretty insane. Level 3 Impale, take your pick. Like, I would say every AoE ability on level 3 is better than Flamestrike. Why is Flamestrike the only one that's interruptible, where there's zero effect, but you lose all your mana? There probably should be a bit of a delay on Flamestrike still, because it does huge damage when it actually does erupt. But 0.8 I think is far too high. We need to decrease that time to make it a lot less likely to get cancelled, is my view. Okay, moving on. B tier. Farseer. This might be a bit of a hot take for some viewers out there. Farseer in B tier, not in A tier, certainly not in S tier. I put him here because the Farseer used to be a very formidable hero. We saw him played all the time, of course, in the heyday of Farseer Headhunters. We saw him everywhere. Seemed a bit OP, but those days are far gone. Farseer Headhunter not playable in Orc Mirror anymore. That may have to do a bit with the Torrents, but also before the Torrent buff, we saw no Farseer. It was all about Blademaster. Farseer not playable against Undead anymore because he falls off too hard in the late game. The Blademaster is the carry you're looking for. The Farseer does get played in one matchup, and one matchup only, but they gets played all the time, and that is against Human. But like I said earlier, I think this is because there's not really a great alternative. The reason why Orcs play Farseer against Human is because you really can't play Blademaster. You have to keep the Human in check early on. You have to make sure he's not getting out of control creep-wise. You have to have some early pressure on level 1 with summons ideally. The Farseer fits the bill. Blademaster is just too weak early game. If the Orcs could get away with a week early against Human, they would play Blade and no Farseer, but they can't. They must play Farseer. However, the Farseer isn't really a great hero for the job. Back in the day, Farseer, the Wolves, used to cost 75 mana. Then they increased their mana to 85, which I think is a lot too high. I think 85 mana cost is too hard on the Wolves. I think also 75 mana for the Wolves was probably too low. Wolves are really good, especially on level 1, compared to how strong the armies are, the heroes are that early in the game. Farseer is still a really good level 1 hero, but where it cost too little mana back then, I think now it costs too much mana. So bringing it down now by 5 mana to 80, I think will be the sweet spot for the Wolves. But that's not the only thing. In my opinion, it's a meta concern and a design problem for Orc that they only have one good late game first hero. Now, they have lots of good late game heroes. We saw that earlier in Lynn's series. Blademaster, Shadowhunter, TC, they're all amazing in the late game. But only one works as a first hero. That's the Blademaster. The Farseer also works as a first hero, quite well, but he's not at all capable of competing in the late game. That is the main reason why Farseer is not playable against Undead. He does not compete against the other heroes, Death Knight first especially, in the late game. So I think the Farseer needs some more late game power. That's why I suggest also increasing the Chain Lightning damage. These are the old values from 85, 125, 180 to 85, 140, 190. I feel like level 3 Chain Lightning is kind of good already, but could use a little bit more to give him that level 5 hero power spike that so many other heroes have. And level 2 Chain Lightning really, I think, is the underwhelming part about Chain Lightning. So here, 15 more damage. This would be big buffs for the Farseer, absolutely. But I think the Farseer needs a big buff to be playable in just more than one matchup. Next hero coming up, very similar to the Farseer. The Crypt Lord is quite good in one matchup, but only in one matchup. And there also in that matchup against Human, he's played because he's the only viable hero, not that he's super good necessarily. You want to play Crypt Lord because Crypt Lord is good at fast expansion, and he's good against pally rifles. There's no other undead hero that can do both things at the same time. Lich would probably be better in many cases, especially against Archmage play. DK is better in some cases if you want to play one base, but Crypt Lord is the only hero that can really do both things. Can beat Archmage in 2-base, and can beat pally rifles with an expansion. So Crypt Lord here is the compromise that Undead goes for, because that's the most reliable choice that they have, but in my opinion, not a very strong hero. So I suggest some small buffs here to the Crypt Lord, not as big as the Farseer, because Undead doesn't really need the Crypt Lord to be a very viable choice. I think Orc is much more in need of another strong first hero that can transition into a strong late game. I'm gonna post this link. I was gonna post it later actually in the Discord, but I guess if you guys want to have it already, I can also post it in the Twitch chat. I have Twitch chat closed, by the way, because otherwise I get too distracted doing these things. Back to my point though, Undead. You know how I said Orc has a design problem with their heroes. There's only one good first hero in the late game. It's very different for Undead. Death Knight first can be amazing in the late game. Lich first can be amazing in the late game. Dreadlord can be the most amazing in the late game, and even Crypt Lord can be very good in the late game. Although I would say, I'm not even sure if this is the weakest level 5 hero. Not necessarily. Against some armies he's really good, against some he's really bad. So Undead is extremely well designed where it comes to first hero viability. Like, insanely good. Every single hero can be a first hero because of the strength of fast expo and road necromancy, and also healing nowadays with the ritual dagger. But Crypt Lord is still only playable in one matchup, and that could be improved. I would love to see Spike Carapace being heavily buffed with a damage return. Right now, the damage return of Spike Carapace is 15, 30, 45. We never see that ability. Beetles and Impale are just always better, and I think it needs a big buff to be relevant. I always like when there's specific roles for specific heroes that only they can fulfill. For example, Crypt Lord with this could become the perfect combat tank against melee armies. Against ghoul armies, footy armies, grunt armies, whatever. If you have a big damage return, all of a sudden there's a big danger in hitting the Crypt Lord. Right now with Spike Carapace, the way it is anybody worried about hitting the Crypt Lord? Hell no. Nobody cares. It's a small amount of damage return. So I think this needs to be increased heavily, as I suggested here with these numbers. And also, I think this is not enough, because to be honest, even with this buff, still nobody might pick Spike Carapace, because the other two abilities are better, especially if you're playing as a first hero. The other two abilities are better. But with a better Spike Carapace, maybe as a second or third hero, where you can spam both abilities, might make him more playable. But I think the Crypt Lord also needs a little bit more intelligence. I don't think we should decrease the mana cost of Impale more or Beetles more. I think that would make those abilities a little bit too good. I think like Impale and Beetles are right at the verge right now at being nicely balanced. But I think the Crypt Lord is just a little bit too mana starved. So giving him one more base intelligence, I think would help him a lot and might make him more playable in more different situations. Next point coming up, Dark Ranger. Dark Ranger normally, as many summon heroes, she's supposed to be good in the early game, but we never see her as a first hero. Way back when, many years, we used to see it from Night Elf, creeping up with Dark Ranger, with Skellies, getting the snowball going, getting a bunch of Skellies out. But those days are gone. Those days aren't here. And I feel like a problem with the Dark Ranger is, when you have her as a first hero, she runs out of mana pretty fast, with the Black Arrow costing 6 mana, and of course you're using that from the beginning of the game all the time to speed up creeping. So I think decreasing her mana cost from 6 to 5 on the Black Arrow would make sense, and also having some more damage on the Life Drain could be good. Life Drain is one of the most underused abilities in the game. I think I've seen it in all of my casting days exactly 2 times. One was a legendary game by TH in WC3L. Way back when. So I think a chunky buff here could be implemented. 5 more damage on level 1, 10 more damage on level 2, and 15 more damage on level 3. Of course, that's damage per second, so those numbers can get pretty quickly out of hand, potentially. Maybe there's a build out there with Life Drain that nobody has thought of. And when I wrote this down, I didn't actually read that one line in the PTR patch. So if the mana cost is decreased from 50 to 25, and the damage is increased, I wonder if that might be too much. If the mana cost is increased, I think I would go more cautious on these numbers. I think it still needs a bit of a damage buff, though. I think I would go, oops, not 550, 50. Increase it by 5, 5, 10. I think that would be more prudent. If the numbers were higher, maybe it's not a crazy, scary buff. But if you buff 2 things on the same spell very often, it can get kind of wild. Okay, moving on. Next B tier hero, the Warden. Exactly the same as Farseer and Crypt Lord, basically. Only playable in one single matchup. The Warden, we all know, she's amazing in the late game. Once you get to level 5, level 6, she's off to the races. Level 3 Foul Knives is crazy good. Avatar of Vengeance is crazy good. Broken in many ways. Maybe should be redesigned in some ways, especially the Vengeful Spirits being invulnerable is probably not the best game design idea, but we're going to leave that aside for the time being. Where the Warden struggles is the early game. And the more relevant early game spell is Shadow Strike. So I feel like Shadow Strike could use a little bit of a buff. Not too much. We don't want to go too ham here. We don't want to reduce the mana cost too much. But I feel like the damage over time of Shadow Strike could go up a little bit. Maybe that's going to enable her to be played in more matchups. So damage over time, tick of the Shadow Strike increased by 5 per tick on each level. I think would make sense. But with the Warden, I think we have to be careful. The Warden is so good in the late game already. We don't just want to make her early game better, so she always reaches the late game, and then she's going to be unbeatable in the late game. I think this is a change that should have happened a long time ago. This is another nerf I'm suggesting. Decrease the duration of Avatar of Vengeance from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. Avatar of Vengeance is super strong and super insane already. Like I said, the Spirits of Vengeance are invulnerable, which is wild. There should at least be a window where there's no Avatar available. Right now, it's a 3-minute cooldown and 3-minute duration. It's 100% uptime on Avatar of Vengeance with invulnerable units. That's insane. That's too strong. So I would strongly suggest that we bring up the floor of the Warden a little bit, especially in the early game, with a stronger Shadow Strike, and bring down the ceiling a little bit with the insane ult from the Warden. Next hero is the Panda. Again, very similar to the other heroes. I don't even know if there's a single matchup where the Panda is meta right now. Is there a single matchup where we see Panda most of the time? Orcs tried playing Panda second against Pally Rifles. Didn't really work out. Has been replaced by the Naga. We used to see Panda second with the Keeper first, but Keeper first is garbage. Keeper first is coming later. So he's not being played there either. Okay, very rarely, when we get a Night Elf 2-base game where the Night Elf is ahead and can play with map control in the tier 2 stage after they had a great early game, especially against human, then they sometimes pick a Panda. I think it's the only case where we see Panda right now. Panda Breath of Fire mana cost used to be 70. A couple of years ago, it was increased to 75. Seems like that was a big mistake because nobody's playing Panda anymore. And of course, with our PTR changes, nobody is ever going to play Panda ever again. So I hope, again, Blizzard, that we don't go through with that change and rather look for other options. This is... I'm not even sure if this is going to be enough for Panda, by the way. With the Breath of Fire, with the way the Breath of Fire works right now, reducing mana cost by 5, is that enough? I don't know. Although 5 mana less on the main ability is kind of a big deal. All right, moving on. C tier. These are the heroes that are so bad in most cases, but in some rare scenarios, in 1 or 2 matchups, maybe can fit a niche role. First is the Pit Lord. So right now, when we see the Pit Lord played, it is normally only as an undead third hero. When you're going for a timing push, like for example, 50 supply, Fiend push against Orc before he's too strong late game with Wyvern and Orc heroes. And there he can be good, but that's basically the only way he is going to have a chance. And then he's going to fall off quickly. The weird thing with Pit Lord is, he has this great fantasy that he has cleave attack, and then you can do a lot of damage to units in a big area, and like just... wait. Give me 1 second. I'm on Wikipedia right now. Here we go. Like, on paper, this seems so strong. Cleave, splash damage, 40, 65, 90. Like, if you just hit 3 units with Cleave, which is easy to do, you do more than double damage with each hit. Sometimes you might be able to hit like 6, 7 units in 1 hit. It seems like this should have such insane potential. A couple of years ago, there was a little bit of a hype wave going on with Shadowhunter first into Pit Lord second, but it never really took off. Despite these numbers having this huge potential, it seems that the Pit Lord never quite gets it to work. Interestingly also, in Direct Strike, I know many of you play this game as well, the Pit Lord never really works. And in Direct Strike, there's a million units. It seems like Cleave should be good, but it's never good. It's never good. The Pit Lord is just, he seems so clunky as well. He seems so unaware of how to move. The Pit Lord is clumsy. That's the word I was looking for, sorry. Clumsy. The Pit Lord is so clumsy. He's walking around, he's trying to get in right clicks, but just doesn't work. He just wastes his time walking around and not actually getting in the hits. So I think what the Crypt Lord needs is more attack range. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this is doable in Warcraft 3, but I think it is. If I remember right, the standard range for melee heroes, because it's not 0, it's like 180, right? Ranged heroes is 600 for most of them. I think Firelord is like 500. But for melee heroes, for the most part, it's 180, I believe. It doesn't say it on Wikipedia. We would have to look it up on in the world editor. But I don't think it's locked at 180. I think you could increase that range. I think so because I know that they did it in Dota. And I don't mean Dota 2, I mean Dota in Warcraft 3, where they still had heroes with melee as their tag and them having melee attacks, but there were some with slightly shorter and some with slightly longer melee range. And the Pit Lord having this huge polearm and having this huge attack with Cleave, I think would also make a lot of sense for him thematically if he had a little bit more range with his melee attack. This would make him a lot more clumsy and a lot more able to fulfill that fantasy of having this big cleave attack while also being a lot more playable. So I think his attack range should be increased by 25. So, like I said, I think it's 180 range on melee heroes. I'm not 100% sure on this. But if that's increased by 25 to 205, I think that would help him a lot. I think the Pit Lord is so bad, though. I feel like this might not even be good enough. Like, Howl of Terror, the Pit Lord is such a weird hero, dude. Like, on paper, Pit Lord seems like one of the craziest heroes. Like, cleave potential damage is so insane, but it never seems to happen. And then Howl of Terror, you can get the Pit Lord on level 1. Use Howl of Terror, and it's a 30% on level 1. On level 1, it's a 30% damage reduction on all enemies within range. Of course, it's dispellable, but oftentimes it's not dispellable, and it still seems like garbage. It's so strange. Like, if a new game came out and I saw these numbers, I was like, oh my god. Bro, have you seen the Pit Lord? When this game comes out next week, I'm going to play Pit Lord all day because this guy's going to be broken. Just look at those numbers. 30% on level 1. Cleave, hitting multiple targets. But you couldn't be more wrong. The Pit Lord is complete garbage. And I think he needs some big help. I think, like I said, the attack range would be the coolest thing. The best thing, it would make the Pit Lord way more fun to play. Would make him way more viable of a right clicker. And yeah, would also fit the fantasy, like I said. And when a spell is bad, one easy way to fix that is decrease the mana cost. Seeing all these changes here together, increase attack range, and mana cost reduction on both other spells. I mean, it shows you how bad I think the Pit Lord is. Maybe it's a bit too much. Maybe it's 5 or 10. 5 or 10, I'm not sure. Decrease mana cost on both spells, 5 to 10. I can't decide on this one. Okay. Done with the Pit Lord. We keep going with the Keeper of the Grove. Now this one is the most near and dear to my heart. I've been casting Warcraft for many years, of course, as you guys know. And it fills me with sadness and despair to watch what has happened to the Night Elf race, to the Night Elf meta. Night Elf always used to be the most creative race, the most inclusive race when it came to strategies and heroes, and the most suitable race for creative minds to find new ways to play. We had tavern heroes in the past. We had expo rushes in the past. We had Mass Fairy Dragon and Dark Ranger and Tinker and Alchemist, Goblin Alchemist, and Pit Lord plays and Pandaren plays and Keeper plays, Demon Hunter and Warden. All those wonderful things, all those wonderful plays we've seen over the years from Lawlight, Moon, and Foggy, especially those 3 creative Night Elves. And you know what we've had for the last year? Demon Hunter, Naga, Dryad, Bears. That's it. That's a Night Elf strategy. That is the only Night Elf strategy in all matchups, in every game, every day, every game, doesn't matter. And it makes me sad. It is such a waste of a race and such a disgraceful state of the meta. There's just one matchup possible. And the worst is when it's Night Elf Mirror. Oh, when it's Night Elf Mirror, then we have the same on both sides that we see every day. Absolutely dreadful. Keeper needs a big buff. Also, by the way, I'm going to talk about the Warden, the Pandaren, she's going to come later. But we know the Keeper is possible as a first hero. We have seen it before. This was a year and more ago when the Keeper was still good. Of course, some people were asking for a lot of Keeper nerfs after in 1.30 the Keeper was doing too well, or was that earlier? Was that 1.29? Maybe that was 1.29. Keeper got nerfed a million times. He got nerfed into the ground. The Keeper is now complete garbage. This was also one of the most ridiculous attempts of a buff that I've seen, by the way. Wait. On the latest patch, Blizzard was trying to buff Keeper, but these buffs were beyond a joke. The Keeper, his strength gain increase was improved. His strength gain was improved from 1.8 to 2. That means that starting from level 2, the Keeper had 1 more strength. 1 more strength for 25 more HP. Not main stat. 1 more strength starting on level 2. And Treants attack cooldown, so their attack speed was increased as well by a tiny amount. This did absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Keeper was changed a lot over the years, of course. It was indeed 1.29, where it was heavily buffed. With Treants and Entangle, and lots of things. And then here, in 1.30.2 came the nerfs. Treant base damage nerfed. Entangle, nerfed. Entangle, nerfed again. Treants, nerfed again. Tranquility, nerfed. Keeper of the Grove, nighttime vision, nerfed. Keeper int, nerfed. Look at all these nerfs! A million nerfs. One after the next. After that, they tried to rebuff him a little bit again with level 3 Entangle range. And Thorn's Aura. Thorn's Aura is actually seeming the best ability for the Keeper right now. And yeah, tiny buff here. The Keeper needs way more than those 2 ridiculous, useless buffs that he got in the latest patch. We need the Keeper in the meta. Just for the sanity of the viewership, we need to have more than just the goddamn Demon Hunter every game. Did somebody gift a bunch of subs? Yo, Butt Crumbs with the 20 gifted subs. Thank you very much. I have the chat closed right now because I just get confused otherwise. But thank you very much once again. Yeah, Keeper. Many heroes need a buff to make the meta more healthy, but this is the most necessary for the health of the meta. To not have just goddamn Demon Hunter and Bears every single game. Alright. Let's keep going. Alchemist. Alchemist also completely unplayable in most cases. However, in some matchups, he is still playable. For example, with Mass Hunt's Potom, which is rare, we see Heal Spray. In general, if we see Alchemist, we see him because we need Heal Spray. Also, Human plays him quite a bit against Warden play, especially when they want to stay aggressive on tier 2. So Heal Spray seems to be fine. But what has fallen completely by the wayside is Acid Bomb. Acid Bomb used to be great, perhaps a bit too strong, and then just like the Keeper, it got nerfed into the ground. But more interestingly, Chemical Rage has always been complete garbage. It's an increase in move speed and attack speed on a 30-second cooldown for 25 mana with a 15-second duration. It makes the Alchemist very frustrating to play when you play Chemical Rage with him, which nobody really does. But if you play it, you're strong for 15 seconds, and then you're a weak noodle that can do nothing for another 15 seconds. So half the time you're strong, and half the time you're weak. Actually, it's a lot worse than that, because you can't just spam Chemical Rage all the time. It doesn't cost much mana, but it will add up. So you are a weak noodle for most of your life, and only rarely are you good when you use Chemical Rage, if that is your skill build. I think Chemical Rage, one of the worst abilities in the game, should get a big buff. Increase baseline duration from 15 to 18 seconds, and then even more duration on level 2 and 3. And secondly, Acid Bomb, I think, needs a little nudge to make it better again. It shouldn't be the same as in the past, where, as we remember, Keeper Alchemist combo way back when, that was certainly too strong. I can again point to Liquipedia, where we can see all the changes that happened to the Alchemist. So 1.29, that's when things got crazy. Their Acid Bomb damage over time was increased from 5, 10, 15. Hold on, is that the right numbers? Yeah, primary target, this is the primary target, to 8, 13, 18. That was a huge buff. And secondary targets is this one, 3, 6.5, 10 to 5, 8.5, 12. Also a big buff there. Heal Spray was also buffed, Transmute was also buffed, Heal Spray was later on nerfed. And then, same time as the Keeper, here come the overnerfs on the Alchemist. Wait, let me read through this properly. So Acid Bomb, primary damage got decreased and secondary damage got decreased. From 5 to 4, for example. You can read through all the examples yourself. And then it got nerfed again from 4 to 3. So right now, the values are I'm looking at the secondary damage. 3, 6, 11. Of course, when you throw Acid Bomb, the way it works is the primary target you hit, the one you clicked on, takes a little bit more damage over time than the other targets around it, but it also splashes in an AoE to the other targets around the one you clicked on. And that's the secondary targets. I think it would be kind of cancer if the primary target damage was way higher, because I still remember the days where on ladder, Alchemist buys Boots of Speed, Chemical Rage, Acid Bomb, throws that on your hero, and just chases you around the entire map. If that's too strong, that's kind of annoying. But we've clearly seen that Acid Bomb isn't what it used to be. It's pretty damn weak. And I think so for that reason, secondary damage has to be increased significantly from 3, 6, 11 to 4, 8, 12. Those would be some nice round numbers as well. Let me write that down right here. And the cool thing here would be, maybe there's going to be an Alchemist build emerging where he does go Chemical Rage and Acid Bomb. Right now, that's absolutely not the case, because Heal Spray is by far his best ability. It's pretty much the only reason you pick him, and nobody goes Chemical Rage if they want to win. With these significant buffs, maybe there's going to be a new avenue opened up for the Alchemist to be a viable first hero, maybe even, to be a viable damage dealer, and not just a healer. In general, I feel like it's kind of boring in Warcraft 3 that when it comes to 1v1 man fights, there's only 2 heroes who will ever win that battle, and nobody else can beat them. Of course, it's Demon Hunter and Blade Master, the agility heroes. And of course, they are, you know, the glaives wielding, samurai sword wielding, strong melee heroes. Of course, they should be strong 1v1 fighters. That is supposed to be their role. That is supposed to be their purpose. But the fact that nobody else can even be close to their level and can hang in there with a 1v1 fight ability is kind of sad. I think Alchemist, he's supposed to be a viable alternative. He's got that big damage range, lots of strength. He's got a steroid inbuilt with the attack speed increase from Chemical Rage, but it never really works. It never really works. The Alchemist is by no way comparable to these other 2 melee brawlers, so I feel like Alchemist could use some love there and would maybe open the way for different stat-heavy heroes with good right-clicks so that Blade and Demon aren't the only 2 dominant forces. Alright, moving on. Now we're getting really deep into the trash. We're diving into the D tier. These are the heroes that are so bad that they're basically never playable. Beastmaster, Dreadlord, Firelord, Pandaren, Tinker. Firelord, admittedly, we are seeing him a little bit at the moment for one reason. If you want to prevent corpses from torrents, you go Firelord for Incinerate. You don't care about the soul burn, you don't care about lava spawn, you don't even care about damage from Incinerate. You just care about eliminating corpses. This is only use in the entire meta. Tinker, I was talking about him a little bit earlier. He is ultra garbage tier at the moment, not playable anywhere, completely trash. Now, we're seeing 2 buffs already on the other 2 abilities. And with that in mind, I think I should reduce these numbers a little bit. And that's good, that the Tinker is getting some love on the PTR because, yeah, he's garbage. And also Beastmaster. This makes me the most sad. I will admit I'm a bit emotionally invested on the Beastmaster. Single player wise, the Rexar campaign was by far my favorite thing in all of Warcraft 3. It was an amazing experience, and the Beastmaster there was fleshed out as such a cool character, the master of the wild, the commander of beasts, the survival expert, and a very strong brawler. He had this huge physique. He's an ogre, orc mix. He's this big brawler. And where is that might? Where is that might? Where has it gone? Why is the Beastmaster so bad? Like, from a fantasy thematic standpoint, it's sad that this mighty-looking wild warrior is not playable in Warcraft 3, but also beyond that, balance-wise and design-wise, it's ridiculous. Like, Beastmaster is supposed to be really good as a first hero because he's supposed to have good stats, or at least pretty good stats, which are very important. We learned that over the years. That's why everyone is buying circlets, especially right-click heroes like Demon and Blade, but also many others. But also with the summons, the Beastmaster is supposed to be good in the early game. While there is little dispel available, those summons are supposed to be strong. He's supposed to be a strong force early in the game, and that's absolutely not the case. Beastmaster is never playable as a first hero, basically never playable as a second hero, unless you're far ahead already. Beastmaster is just a joke. And I think I know the reason. I think I know why the Beastmaster is the reason. Do you guys want to know why? Here again, Wikipedia brings us the answers. That's because the Beastmaster was nerfed into the ground many years ago. I don't know what was going on early in 2003. I guess it was late 2003 in this case. These were the early days of the Frozen Throne. And apparently Beastmaster was very strong back then. Because look at this Omega nerf. Beastmaster, base strength reduced from 22 to 25, minus 3 strength, and base armor reduced from 2 to 3. In one patch, he lost 3 main stat and 1 full point of armor. And that's not enough. The Hawk also got nerfed with HP reduction. I'm fine with that. I hate the Hawk. And the Hawk is a weird design. But this base stat reduction is criminal. Beastmaster probably never recovered. We had a couple of changes after that. This was another big nerf, by the way. The Bear's Bash used to stun heroes for 2 seconds, now only 1. I think this is more healthy. I think this is fine. Quill Beasts were nerfed again. Channeling ults, this doesn't really matter. Quill Beasts were nerfed again with duration, and the Hawk was nerfed as well with mana. 1 million nerfs in a row landed the Beastmaster in the trash can. A couple of years ago, the Bear then was buffed by having its mana cost reduced. This helped a lot, but it didn't help enough. And the sad thing is, I think Blizzard, the balance team back then, whoever it was, they lost sight of the, how do you say that? Losing sight of the goal? No. I had another word in mind, but I don't know what word it was. But they lost sight, I guess, of what's important. So, Beastmaster, what is this hero? He's a summoner hero. He's the master of the wilds. It's good hero design. He's got a bear, beefy brawler, he's got a quill beast, ranged damage dealer, and he even has a flying unit. Honestly, I don't like the flying unit because very often you can't deal with flying units early. This is a bit of a design problem, but the other two are great. What does this mean? Beastmaster is good in the early game because all summon heroes are good in the early game. If you can bolster your army with more units in the early game, but you have few units, that's a good early game hero. That's supposed to be the way it works. Farseer good, Keeper good, Crypt Lord good, all good with summons in the early game. That's supposed to be the way that it works. However, later on when there's more dispel available, those summoner heroes will lose some of their worth, especially if they don't have other strong abilities that can then be effective in the late game. Crypt Lord, for example, has Impale. Farseer has Chain Lightning, which is Keeper has not much because everything gets dispelled. But in theory, along with summons, you could have another ability that while the summons get weaker towards the end game, the other ability can carry the hero. Not with the Beastmaster. Beastmaster has only summons, nothing else. That is something that only he, and only he alone, has special as a hero, as a personality. He only has summons. So, that means there's no redeeming factor from other abilities. And again, I want to say, it fits the theme. It's cool. He's the Beastmaster, he's a summoner guy, he's got a zoo around him, that's all good. But why I'm saying Blizzard lost sight of what's important, what old Blizzard here realized, okay, hold on. So he's got a lot of summons, and those are going to be good early game. But at some point, there's going to be Dispel. And if he doesn't have summons then to rely upon anymore, and he doesn't have other spells that are strong in the late game, what else can the Beastmaster have to make him useful, at least if the summons then have fallen off? And the right answer is stats. Strong stats, especially on a frontliner, can still always make him valuable. Strong stats on a frontliner means that even if you don't have abilities, even if you don't have mana or summons that don't do anything, you still have a good frontliner to tank and maybe even do some damage. Old Blizzard realized this. The Beastmaster needs strong stats to be a viable hero. But after all these nerfs, he got put in the trash can, and he was never rescued from that stinky, stinky trash can. And that is why I want to appeal again to the old wisdom of Blizzard, which here they were right about. The stats were probably a little bit too high. I wouldn't give him the armor increase as well, but I would give him, like I wrote here, give him back the 3 base strength. Good stats, especially good main stat, is especially valuable in the early game, again, when you don't have many other units to complement and strengthen your army. So much comes down to the first heroes. I think we've learned this by now. That is why we see Demon Hunter and Blade Master all the time as first heroes, because they have the best stats. They got the best stats, they got the best right clicks. The strength of their abilities oftentimes doesn't matter in the late game, because in the early game, they deliver so well with their sheer stats. And like I said earlier with the Alchemist, I think we need some alternative competitors so that the Blade Master and Demon aren't just the stat dominators all the time in every matchup for all these years and decades. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it that the Demon and the Blade are the only ones ever who win the man fight. We need some other sources, some other choices that perhaps aren't on the same level, but at least get close. Alchemist could be one. Beastmaster could be one. With better skills in this case and better stats in that case. This might make the Beastmaster first playable, giving a lot more strategic potential to many races. Also as a second hero. Third hero is still going to be garbage, but that's okay. Alright, Beastmaster, one of my favorite heroes. I hope I didn't hammer on this point too much, but I would love to see him play, and it's so painful for me to see that he's never played anywhere. It hurts me. Okay, though, I'm done with the Beastmaster now. Enough of him. Let's keep going with the Dreadlord. Dreadlord, one of the very worst heroes in the game, but it's interesting. The Dreadlord has insane potential. On level 5 and 6, he gets crazy good. He's similar to the Warden in this way, but unlike the Warden, he's way weaker before. On levels 2 and 3 and even 4, the Dreadlord isn't really good. And so here he needs some early game improvement, I think. Last patch, his damage of level 2 Carrion Swarm was increased by 10, from 120 to 130, I think. And it didn't really make a dent. Dreadlord is still garbage, and nobody plays him. So I think we should look at the early game spell here, because late game, like I said, Dreadlord is amazing. Dreadlord is in fact too good. That's why I suggest a little bit of an Infernal nerf as well. Infernal, same like the Avatar of Vengeance, has 3-minute cooldown with 3-minute uptime. That's too much. So I think the duration should be reduced by 45 seconds. A little bit less than the Avatar of Vengeance, because Avatar of Vengeance is crazier and more annoying with invulnerable spirits. But with the Infernal, there should also be 45 seconds of downtime, at least. Maybe this could even be more downtime. But yeah, looking at the early game spell. Carrion Swarm is the late game spell, but Sleep is the early game spell. Sleep can be a decent tool for surrounding, but it never really seems to do enough. It never really seems to be a great disable. If you're using Sleep in the fight, especially, it seems like if you sleep the right target and you disable that for a couple of seconds, it should help you a lot in the fight. But that's not really how it works, because you use Sleep and slept for just a little moment, and then by a good player, that slept unit gets woken up, of course, with the right click. So I think for that reason, the invulnerability duration of Sleep should be increased from 2 to 3 seconds. In case you guys don't know how it works, and when you sleep a target, you can't attack it right away. It's going to be invuln for 2 seconds, and only after that duration you can hit it to wake it up. So I think for that reason, it should be increased to 3 seconds. So it's going to be a little bit longer of a guaranteed disable from the Sleep. It's not exactly guaranteed, by the way, because Dispel can still break the Sleep. It doesn't matter if the unit is invulnerable. A Dispel will still instantly dispel and cancel the Sleep. But the right click, wake up, cancel would be then harder to achieve. Yeah, Is that enough to help the Dreadlord? I don't know, but it would help, especially in the early game. Next one is the Firelord. Firelord, like I said earlier, only really gets used to deny corpses from torrents at the moment. He is a garbage hero with garbage abilities. Lava Spawn costs 150 mana. That's always been crazy. By far the most expensive summon in the game. More expensive in mana than many ultimates. I think the concern here for Blizzard was, okay, Lava Spawn has to cost a lot of mana. Otherwise, it's going to be too many Lava Spawns, and they keep attacking, and they keep splitting, and then it's going to be a Lava Spawn frenzy, and oh my god, nobody can do anything. That's not really how it works, though. Especially for better players, you know how to counterplay this. If the Firelord is creeping greedily to try to get these Lava Spawn all to split, you can harass, you can come in with the Shadow Priest Dispel maybe, in the case of Night Elf, with detonates, and if the opponent is pushing you with Lava Spawn, and he's trying to get them to split, you can just disengage, run away, wait for the duration to end, and there's a lot of ways to counterplay the Firelord, and the Lava Spawn are perhaps the worst summon in the game. Firelord. And that is, Soulburn needs to be stronger as well, I think. It's a dispellable silence, like also normal silence is, but it's single target. Right now it has a long cooldown of 12 seconds. I think this could be reduced to 10 seconds, and that would be all fine. And next up, we have the Podum. I don't think I have to talk about the Firelord too much. His abilities just seem weak, so I feel like this makes sense. Podum. Podum, another hero that is supposed to work as a first hero for Night Elf, but same as the Keeper, she is just too bad. She is just simply too weak and cannot compete with the Demon Hunter, cannot even compete with the Warden. I think especially Searing Arrow should be a lot better. I looked it up and was surprised to see Searing Arrow costs 8 mana per attack. Black Arrow, for example, only 6 mana. And the Podum, when you use her as a first hero, normally you start out with Searing Arrow right away, and you keep firing, and you run out of mana pretty quickly. Running out of mana means that you're going to take more Moon Juice to heal back at home. That's going to make recovery more difficult, and perhaps more importantly, at some point usually the Podum runs out of mana, and when she does, only rarely will new Searing Arrows come out. But if the Searing Arrow costs less mana, then you would be able to more frequently hit with returning mana with more Searing Arrows. This would be quite the help for the Podum already. I don't think it's enough though. I think the Searing Arrow also needs more damage. So yes, indeed, here I dare to go for the double buff. Mana decrease, on the Searing Arrow, and damage increase on the Podum to hopefully make her a viable first hero. And finally, some new strategies might be able to emerge. The Podum with the new Huntresses, for example, they showed a lot of promise when we saw those heavy armor hunts first, but it has not delivered on the pro level at all. Nobody's playing it. Okay, I've seen some games, but they always failed. I really want the Podum to be viable, so I suggest even another buff. All of these together are probably a little bit too much, but I'm giving some options. Increasing the True Shot aura damage would also be a possibility from 10, 20, 30 to 15, 30, 45. This would be clearly a valuable buff to the Podum. This would obviously be very good for quite a lot of army comps, Huntresses and Dryads especially, maybe even Chims, but that's, I guess, very unlikely. But it's kind of boring. Just increasing the numbers on an aura, it's kind of boring. Honestly, this is the least fun suggestion I think I have in all of these. More interesting, that's why I say or, I think it would be really cool to increase her nighttime vision. I'm always a big fan of having very specific heroes who fit specific roles gameplay-wise, and ideally also have very specific positioning lore-wise and theme-wise in the game. The Podum and the Huntresses both, they are hunters in the night. They lie in wait. They're ready to ambush. They're fierce warriors of the night. How cool would it be if the Podum had more vision than any other hero? 1800 vision range is standard for every hero, I think for every hero, on daytime, and then nighttime is 800 vision. What about the Podum? What if she had more vision at night because she has a cat and Elun's Grace and whatever? She had more vision at night. This would be 100 more than her daytime vision to make her that hunter in the night. not just lore-wise, but also gameplay-wise. I think that would be really cool. And lastly, the Tinker. Talked about the Tinker a little bit earlier already. He is probably the worst hero in the game right now, while some of these other D-tier heroes sometimes see some play in some scenarios and at times don't even look completely useless. I cannot think of a single time the last 6 months I ever saw a Tinker looking good. He has just been a complete and utter disaster, absolute catastrophe, way too weak in every way. And on the PTR, Blizzard suggested buffing his rockets and also the Pocket Factory. Pocket Factory buff is small, rockets buff is probably bigger. I think that's cool. But I think also, I think you want to buff the passive. I think the passive is the thing to look for right here. Because the Tinker, the skill build, the way it works is, he always goes either rockets or Pocket Factory and then passive. Because you don't have the mana to support both abilities, you have to pick or choose. And if you just buff the passive, then you leave the road open for any spell or any skill, active skill to be taken. I feel like Tinker could be a very interesting first hero as well. The way he can run around the map, use his move speed, use his abilities, use his craftiness from range, the Pocket Factory maybe for creeping, the rockets maybe to harass. Like, the Tinker is such an interesting hero with such a cool kit, but he's just too weak. I'm thinking a lot about the Tinker as a harass hero and as a first hero perhaps even. And for that, both for harassing and for first hero ambitions, healing, passive healing, is super valuable. That's why I would love to see the engineering upgrade also give HP regen. 1.5, 3, and 4.5 HP per second. Now, with the Tinker being as bad as he is, with this change, he would get 3 buffs in one patch. And when you see all those buffs stacking up, that's when you kind of get worried sometimes. But I think in the Tinker's case, it should be still okay. This is something, though, that you have to keep an eye on. Whenever you buff something immensely, you have to keep an eye on it. That is certainly something we've also learned over the years. Oh, there's also something I want to say about the Potom. I mean, all these buffs together are probably a bit too much. If I could choose, I would not go for the True Shot Aura increase, but rather just the Vision increase and the Searing Arrow buff. But yeah, if we choose to go for a lot of buffs on the Potom or on any other hero, we have to keep an eye on the development and be ready to scale back some of the buffs in case they went too far.